All right, everyone. My name is Sarah Nelson with the Division of Graduate Studies, and I want to welcome everyone to today's impressive graduate school application workshop. The time is 4 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. With that, do know that we have a lot of information that we're going to cover in today's session. There will be time at the end for question and answer. So I do ask kindly that we hold our questions to the end so that we have an opportunity to get through all of the information that we want to get through today. So I'm going to go ahead and shift gears here a moment and share my screen. Okay. All right. So today's topic, strategies for success applying to graduate school at San Francisco State University. This is a workshop where we will cover a lot of information, but I would love to hear from all of you. What topics do you most want to cover in today's session? I'm going to go ahead and launch, if it will allow me to, poll. Okay. Can everyone see the poll?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. All right, so I see a lot of folks have voted. There are still several votes coming in. So you can see a lot of different topics. Please go ahead and select all that may apply. And if there are any topics that are not listed in the poll, please go ahead and type those in the chat box. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds for people to continue to vote. We have quite the turnout this afternoon. I saw in the chat that some folks are joining us from other countries. I want to welcome all of you and thank you so much for making the time to come today. All right, we are at almost, we still a few more votes coming in. Okay, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds. All right. We have the majority of respondents having voted. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So it looks like, can everybody see the poll results?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like most folks are really interested in the timeline, letters of recommendation, and personal statements. Not too much after that are concerns on the minimum admission requirements, which includes GPA and entrance exams. The good news is all of the topics that are listed here today, we will be covering in today's session. And I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat. It looks like financing your education seems to be a common theme. That's something that people want to talk about. How much of the program will be remote? We can definitely cover some of those topics during the Q&A session as well. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and transition to our agenda for today. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about today's the timeline for applying to grad school. What does that look like? How can you set up a timeline to make sure that you are completing all of the things that you need to submit by the time your application is due? We'll talk about the application overview here at San Francisco State University, and then we're going to get to what I would consider the real meat and potatoes of today's presentation and really getting deep into the strategies for submitting a strong and impressive application to graduate school. We're going to talk about how to research a program, which includes both learning about the program, their mission, their vision, their values, why that's important, and how you can leverage that in your application, as well as looking at faculty profiles and mentors and why that's also important. Personal statements and letters of recommendation, and then entrance exam, which include the GRE and GMAT here at San Francisco State. And then there will be time for question and answer and feedback at the end. So let's go ahead and move on to our next poll. Out of curiosity, how long, let me go ahead and launch the next poll. How long do you think it takes to submit an impressive application to graduate school? We have 1 to 2 months, 3 to 4 months, 5 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, and 9+ months. See, a lot of folks are voting. Votes are coming in fast and furious. Give it a couple more seconds. I'm noting that we have 149 people on today's presentation today. That's wonderful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you. It looks like most folks think it's 3 to 4 months. The Division of Graduate Studies, we typically recommend that you try to give yourself between 5 and 6 months to submit a competitive application to graduate school. Now, that timeline is going to vary by student. Some students can do this in less time, some students will take longer, and it really boils down to where you are uniquely at in the process and what is specifically required for the program that you're applying to. So at the end of the workshop, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for some supplemental materials, which does include the timeline worksheet that you see on the screen. This, I just want to provide one major disclaimer. This is a suggestion. It is not a concrete rule. There is no one single correct way to develop your timeline for applying to graduate school. Generally, there are topics that you do need to address earlier in the process and things that need to happen later. You know, deciding on which programs that you want to apply to, researching your programs, identifying your professional goals, and talking to experts in your field. These are things that tend to happen earlier in the process. Completing and submitting your application materials and confirming that your materials have been completely submitted successfully with your programs of study. Those obviously happen near the end of the process, but sometimes the topics in the middle can be shuffled around a little bit. And you may see some items on here that are not required for a program that you may be interested in applying to. Not all programs require a GRE or GMAT entrance exam. Some programs may not require a portfolio. Other programs may have items that are not included on this list, such as writing samples. So what you want to take care to do is to use this as a general guide and compare this to the program of study that you're applying to and what their admission requirements are. Cross off anything that's not relevant to you, add anything that's not included here, so that you can have a really fleshed out timeline that's going to align with the program of study that you're interested in. A little bit about the overview for applying to graduate school at San Francisco State University. The first thing that we all need to be aware of is that first, your application is going to come to the Division of Graduate Studies for review, and our office, that's where I work, our admissions evaluators are really looking at your application to determine if you meet minimum admission requirements, and you can see those on the screen. Students must have completed a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution by the time they would be ready to start their master's program. They have to have left their institutions of higher education in good standing, and there's also the 3.0 GPA requirement, which I think tends to be one of the biggest topics of concern for a lot of students. The GPA requirement, it's either a 3.0 in your cumulative bachelor's degree or a 3.0 in your most recent 60 semester or 90 quarter units of study. If you are a student who has not yet completed your bachelor's degree, but you will earn your bachelor's degree before you would be ready to start your master's program, we do encourage you to apply. We see this all the time, and it's a common question I get in this workshop, so I want to clarify that. If you are a student who is concerned whether you meet the GPA requirement, you can reach out to me via email, and I will work with you to help you evaluate your last 60 unit semester GPA. I went ahead and put that email address in the chat box, but it's gradadv@sfsu.edu. I see a question in the chat, a relevant question in the chat here. Is it most recent 90 units of undergrad or previous grad units will apply as well? So let me clarify the last 60 unit. It's a last 60 semester or a last 90 quarter unit GPA. And it's those units are not just from your bachelor's degree, it's your most recent units regardless of where they were taken. So if you've taken graduate units, if you've taken classes at a community college, those do apply. It's really a reverse chronological timeline of your most recent units, either 90 quarter or 60 semester. If you're confused on how to calculate this, I do encourage you to send me an email at gradadv@sfsu.edu. Now, once our admissions evaluators receive an application, if the student meets the minimum admission requirements, then their application is sent to their academic department for review. And additional program admission requirements do apply, be aware of that. And those are the things like your letters of recommendation, your personal statements, your resume, any other items that are required for admission to that program that will help that admissions committee for the academic department that you've applied to evaluate whether you are prepared for success in that graduate program or in that profession after having earned your master's degree. Our website, this is our Find Your Graduate Program website. This is where you can find a complete list of all of our graduate programs. You can find a list of all of our programs are organized by college. We have 6 different colleges. And you can see in the screenshot here, it starts with the College of Business, Education, College of Ethnic Studies, and it continues on. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat the link to this webpage so that you all can review that after or during the session if you like. But this is where you can find a lot of that information about what programs we offer and different links specifically to that department's webpage and their admission requirements. That admission requirements hyperlink is where you're going to see how many letters of recommendation they require, how long of a personal statement they require, if the program requires a GRE or a GMAT exam. So this is a great link that you may want to hold on to. I'll be sure to share these as well at the end of the session. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and shift over to the strategies for submitting a strong application to graduate school. All right, so on the screen, you will see 3 different definitions. We see a mission statement, a vision statement, and values. And I'm just going to go ahead and read on the screen and we'll have a brief discussion here. So a mission statement, a formal summary of the aims and values of a company, organization, department, or individual. It essentially focuses on what they hope to achieve in the present, whereas a vision statement is that company or department's roadmap for how they're going to achieve that mission and outlines what they hope to be in the future. Embedded within the mission statement and vision statement are values. These are ideologies that guide and support the mission and vision. Values often shape goals that are set for the company or department. So I would like to just ask the group here, why do you think I'm reading this? Why is this relevant to applying to graduate school? Go ahead and feel free to take yourself off mute, or you can go ahead and type a comment in the chat.
I was thinking that, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was thinking that you kind of mentioned it earlier, I think, where it's like, as you're crafting your application materials, you want to understand the values of the program as part of like how maybe you can direct your argument, if you will, of like why you're a good fit for the program. But I think also understanding maybe where the program wants to go and how you fit in there, which is I think where the vision statement comes in.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. It's definitely a very helpful tool for evaluating how this program may fit for you. And it's going to help you evaluate that mutual sense of fit, right? Like, will this program bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be professionally or academically? Is there a sense of alignment with your own personal values? How is this program going to support you in those endeavors? So it's definitely a great way to take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next screen. I just want to make one brief comment here. I'm getting a lot of individual questions on individual circumstances in the chat due to the size of the group today. We have 170 plus participants. I can't respond to those at this time. There will be time at the end for question and answer for any questions you may have, so I encourage you to hold your questions later if your question wasn't yet answered. But back to mission, vision, and values. It helps you to evaluate the program. I think one of the things that is particularly helpful is that can help you to provide inspiration for writing your personal statements. You may find language in the mission, vision, or values of that department that might really resonate with you, and maybe that's something you want to dive into with your personal statement. It can also help you to demonstrate why you're a good fit for the program by kind of borrowing that language. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out here. We don't want to just repeat things that we see or read in the mission, vision, or values for a particular department that you may be applying to in your personal statement or in your other application documents. But the idea is to really just go through and highlight anything that genuinely resonates with you, where you find a natural alignment and a natural fit. And if you're having trouble finding these statements, I want you to explore that department's website for alternate link titles. You may find that this information is not specifically listed as a mission statement or as a vision statement or as values. Sometimes it's just going to be a general paragraph about the department. Sometimes it's going to be under an About Us section. It might be underneath a history of the department section. I've actually seen some department websites that will have that information listed under events. So you want to do your due diligence and be a good detective and read up on the department's website. And as a last resort, you can always contact the department, but I'm going to throw this question back out to the group. Why is that a last resort? Feel free to take yourself off mute or go ahead and type in the chat.
Maybe because they'd want to hear what, maybe they don't want to, influence your statement more so than it being more genuine and coming from yourself.
Yeah, that's part of it. Because you do want it to come across as genuine. I think that there are some additional reasons why it might be a last resort, though. Can anybody else help identify what that might be?
It might be unprofessional, maybe to call them, and they might want you to do your own research before you call them directly.
Yeah, I think we're getting closer here. Yeah, and I see some comments in the chat that are really kind of chiming in on this same reason here. Essentially, most departments, especially, I mean, it's 2021. We've been living in this virtual world for quite a while now. Most departments do publicize this information on their websites, and when students don't do their due diligence to review their websites for this information, it doesn't create the strongest first impression. Graduate students are expected, regardless of your discipline, whether you're an art major, music, kinesiology, regardless of your field of study, graduate students are expected to be resourceful and to do their research. So just be sure that you've reviewed the department website before you ask the department for information that they've published. Now, if you're reading something and you have questions because it's not clear, absolutely reach out to the department and get that clarity that you need. All right. So we've talked a little bit about mission, vision, and values, but the other piece that I want to connect on when it comes to researching department information is, actually, before we move on, I just want to do a quick activity here. So you can see a snapshot here from our Master of Business Administration program's website, which showcases their vision and their mission. So I'm just going to read. It says, our vision: we aspire to be one of the best public urban business schools by applying sustainability and ethical perspectives to our understanding of business practice, global leadership, innovation, the economy, and society. And our mission: we are San Francisco's public business school. We embrace the area's rich diversity and provide access to higher education. Our mission is to prepare students for professional success through high-quality teaching, innovative and relevant courses, discipline-based and pedagogical scholarship, and engagement with the academic and business communities. And then you can see their priorities listed down at the bottom. If I were an applicant interested in applying to the business administration program, what might be some keywords or phrases that might stand out to me in the text that you see on the screen? Feel free to go ahead and type your responses in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute.
I think one thing is urban is something that's there, especially in their vision statement. an urban business school?
Yeah, an urban business school, that definitely sets the stage, doesn't it? I'm seeing some comments here in the chat as well. I'm seeing diversity, inclusion, sustainability, ethical, diversity, global leadership. You all are hitting the nail on the head. You're all getting this. So I strongly encourage you all, when you're applying to your program, to just take a read through and see if any of this language really resonates with you. Don't just pick out keywords or phrases because they're keywords or phrases for the program. Find the words that actually hold meaning for you. Departments can tell if a student is being genuine in their sentiment when they write their personal statements, but you may find that there is shared language that demonstrates that alignment or fit or value match, right? And so that would be really helpful for you to demonstrate that you understand what this program is about, what they value, and where that fit happens. It also will show the academic department that you've done your research on the program when you apply. So it has all of these benefits. So hopefully that activity was helpful for all of you. As I started to allude to a little bit earlier, in addition to doing your research about the program, their mission, their vision, and such, the other really important piece to look at when you're thinking about applying to graduate school are the faculty. So faculty profiles and faculty mentors. You want to consider the fact that faculty at the graduate level, these are the folks that will sit on your research or thesis committees. These are your advisors in your program. They help you kind of navigate from admission to graduation once you've officially been offered admission. Your class sizes at the graduate level are oftentimes significantly smaller, and you have much greater contact with faculty throughout your academic experience. So it's really critical to make sure that the faculty in your department have expertise that's relevant to your professional interests. Our graduate programs often have websites or web pages devoted specifically where you can read about the faculty in the department. Take a look at what their topics are for past and current research. What are their memberships, affiliations, volunteer work, or other involvement? These are items that are really key for helping you to determine if this program is going to be a good fit for you, and if it's going to help you bridge the gap from where you aspire to be professionally or academically once you complete your degree. So we can see a faculty profile example from the Women and Gender Studies department here. This is Dr. Martha Kenny, and it provides her contact information. You can see where you can book a session with her during office hours. She has a little office hours book me link there, and then you can read about her areas of expertise. Most departments do have this information publicly available, so just be sure to take a look at it. Sometimes it'll be listed, unlike mission and vision statements, which can be under a lot of different titles. Usually the faculty are a little bit easier to find. Oftentimes it's just listed as faculty. Sometimes it's people, but you can find that information on that department's website. I also want to add, some programs, when you're applying to graduate school, will specifically require you to identify which faculty you are interested in working with if offered admission. Typically, these are programs that are a little bit more research oriented. So a couple of examples that immediately come to my mind here at SF State include our psychology programs and our biology programs. And in fact, students are expected to have consulted with faculty prior to submitting their application and confirming that they would be able to work with them in a research lab or other research capacity prior to submitting the application and kind of getting a bit of a pre-approval. So if you are looking to get into the sciences, or if you are pursuing a more research-based program, this is especially important. Students that don't do this in advance, it can really hurt their application. So you really do want to make sure that you've taken the time and the care to do that. So now that we've talked about how to do your advanced research on the program, let's go ahead and talk about some of the more specific application elements here. Let's talk about personal statements. This was a big topic that came up in the topic of discussion poll. So I want to go ahead and just go through some best practices when it comes to writing personal statements. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to craft a quality statement. This includes time to brainstorm, draft, revise, and proofread. You also want to make sure that you are paying very close attention to the prompt. You want to make sure that you are answering all parts of the prompt. So if the prompt specifically says in 500 to 750 words, tell me why you're interested in a graduate program with us and what your academic and non-academic preparation has been, make sure that you address all of those pieces. And you may want to make sure that you also adhere to the word or page limits that are provided. These are not loose suggestions. They are concrete guidelines that are expected to be followed. I have read personal statements from students that have not been admitted, and failure to follow the prompt can significantly hurt your application. It sets a negative tone with the admissions committee from the get-go. The good news is that it's pretty easy to do to follow the prompt. You just want to make sure you answer all parts of that prompt and adhere to the word or page limits. Earlier in the chat, I shared the link for our Find Your Graduate Program webpage. When you are applying to grad school at SF State, most academic departments will post their personal statement prompt on their admissions webpage. So that's where you can find that. If it's not posted, it will certainly be posted within the Cal State Apply application. So just be aware of that. You want to make sure that you are emphasizing everything from a positive perspective. So I sometimes get questions from students who are concerned that, maybe your academics in your first couple of years of study weren't as strong, or maybe there was something that happened that you're concerned about in your admission and you're wondering if it's something that you should address in your personal statement. What I can tell you is that you want to make sure that you're dedicating the most space in your essay to focus on your qualifications rather than any deficits. It's very common for undergraduate students to, maybe you don't have the strongest grades your first couple of years in your undergrad, and, you're worried if that's going to hurt your chances of admission. That's pretty common. That's actually, if you think about it, we have that last 60 semester unit, 90 quarter unit GPA option for students that, can demonstrate that their latter years of their study were stronger. A lot of times in your first couple of years as an undergrad, you may be taking courses that are not relevant to your major or what you plan to do long term, and they're not necessarily your strength. It's also, learning to thrive as a college student, that's a journey. I can speak from personal experience. I know that my grades, my last 2 years of my undergrad were stronger than my first 2 years. And learning how to demonstrate your skills on a college level exam, learning how to deliver a college level presentation, or how to write a college level paper. Those are all skill sets that take time to learn, that students are often developing in their first couple of years. If your grades in your latter half and in your more relevant coursework to the program you're applying to are stronger, I would say maybe try to focus more on what are your strengths. Do you have volunteer or work experience that's relevant? Do you have soft skills that make you a good candidate? What are soft skills? Those could be anything from your communication skills, your ability to develop relationships, your analytical skills. Those are going to vary based on person and the program that you're applying to. What is your academic preparation for admission? Have you taken necessary prerequisite courses or related coursework and done well? These are things that you want to think about when you're writing your personal statement. But the bottom line is that your essay should focus almost exclusively on your qualifications. If you're in a position and you're really not sure how to address a concern that you might have, you can certainly feel free to email me and we can set up a time to have a chat. I'm going to go ahead and put my email back in the chat. It's gradadv@sfsu.edu. Again, due to the large size of today's workshop, I can't get into specific scenarios with each of you, but I'd be happy to connect with you one-on-one and kind of chat that out if that's your case. Let's go ahead and talk about the next piece. So your personal statement, gosh, you know, sometimes I think personal statements are one of those pieces of admission where it's not always intuitive to students exactly what's expected, right? Because it's a personal, which means it's about you. But like, where's the line? How professional is it? How do I go about writing this? You do want to consider that this is a professional academic document. It needs to be polished, but it is also about you, and it should demonstrate your ability to be vivid and creative in your writing. Consider the fact that admissions committees receive dozens, sometimes hundreds, depending on the program you're applying to, of applications, and they have to read all of those personal statements. This is your opportunity to be memorable in a way that your other application documents don't really provide the same space for. You know, your test scores, your transcripts, those aren't really going to give an admissions committee the same glimpse into who you are and why you're a great candidate for the program in the same way that your personal statement can. So I want you to all consider this as a really great opportunity to do that. Start with an attention-grabbing opening statement. We call that a hook, right? What is going to catch their interest right away? And this is going to be different for every student, right? Make sure that you're tapping into your creativity here. And that's where giving yourself some time to brainstorm can be really helpful. You also want to make sure that you are putting your face on the page. That encompasses a lot of different things. You want to try to tell a story with your personal statement. Avoid writing a timeline of events. You're going to very quickly bore your reader if you say, well, first I did this, then I did this, then I did this. It doesn't lend to a very interesting essay, and it's not the most creative story that you could tell. It happens to be a pitfall, though, unfortunately, that students will sometimes make just because you're trying to make sure that you talk about your qualifications. And a lot of times that's easy to do if you're thinking about it from a chronological perspective. I would encourage each of you to maybe take some time to brainstorm and think about how you might be able to tell your story from a unique angle. What was the moment that you had that ignited your passion or interest for pursuing an advanced degree in this field? What did that feel like? Go into detail on that. Use sensory details: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. That's one great way. Another thing that you can do is to use what we call concrete nouns. Get rid of anything that says, you know, things or aspects. You know, there are many things you like about that program. Get rid of that and replace them with concrete nouns. What specifically about the program do you like? So the more detail that you can provide, the more of a rich essay you're going to have. Also, be sure to use what we call active verbs. Active verbs are just a few examples. Instead of saying, you know, I did this, or I am, you know, this quality, you know, think about active verbs that you might use on a resume. It's the same thing. Managed, led, collaborated, taught, helped, assisted. These are different types of active verbs. If you replace any verbs to be, is, was, were, and replace those with active verbs in your essay, you're going to elevate the quality of your writing pretty quickly. So these are some really concrete tasks that you can do. You also want to make sure that you are explaining to the reader what the program means to you. Don't tell them what the program is. Faculty who are evaluating your personal statements, they already know what their program is about. They're more interested in why you're interested in them, right? So what is it about their program that you really liked? Why did you choose their program versus, you know, other competitor Bay Area programs? show them that you're applying to this program specifically and that you're not using the same essay to apply to 10 different schools. And then the final piece I want to mention here is that you want to make sure that you proofread your essay before you submit it. Don't just rely on the spell and grammar check in your word processor. I don't know about you, but I have made that mistake where you send an email and I thought that, spelling and grammar check had caught it. But there was a word in my email, which is an actual word, but was not the correct word in the context, right? I'm sure many others have had that same experience. I'm seeing some nodding heads. So just make sure that you take that extra care to really proofread every word. Get another person to take a look at it as well. It does not necessarily need to be an English professor. Anyone with reasonable writing skills will be able to help you do a good proofread. The important thing is that, I think what often happens is we are so invested in writing this document that is so deeply personal to us, and it has such great meaning because it directly impacts our future and our admission to grad school. And we stop seeing things that can be really obvious to a fresh pair of eyes. So just make sure that you bring a second person in to take a proofread before you go ahead and hit submit. I want to take just a moment before I move on to the next topic to mention that there will be an opportunity at the end where you will be able to sign up for some supplemental materials. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but want to make sure I say it again because I see some people kind of coming and going from the session. You will have an opportunity to sign up for supplemental documents, which will help you write your personal statement. We have a handout on entrance exams, letters of recommendation, your application timeline, and some other additional helpful materials. So if you're panicking about the workshop moving too fast or you're trying to take a lot of notes, do know that if you sign up for those materials, I will provide you with a copy of today's PowerPoint, as well as all of those supplemental handouts, and you'll have our contact information if you have any follow-up questions. So I hope that that eases any concerns in the group today. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. I'm seeing comments in the chat. It's at the end. You'll have an opportunity to sign up for those materials. It'll be one of the final slides at the end of the workshop. No problem. Okay, so letters of recommendation. Who should we ask? So preferred letter of recommendation writers are either faculty that have evaluated you in upper division related undergraduate coursework, or supervisors in either paid or volunteer settings that can speak to your propensity for success if offered admission into the program or in that field after you've earned your degree. So if, sometimes I get the question from students, is one better than the other? That varies pretty wildly by department. If your program has a preference, they will typically say so on that department's specific admissions webpage. Some programs really value work experience. Other programs are really looking for academic references. And some programs don't really have a preference. If they don't specifically indicate, typically that means that they don't usually have a strong preference. If you're concerned and you want to double check, you can always contact the department. But in the vast majority of cases, if they're not specifically citing that, they tend not to have a strong preference. Now, when should you ask? So I'm going to expand that to say, how much time should you give your letter of recommendation writers? You want to give them 1 to 2 months advance notice before your letter of recommendation or your application is due to write a strong letter of recommendation for you. And you want to be mindful of busy periods, especially when we're talking about faculty. So, faculty see dozens, sometimes hundreds of students each semester. And if you're asking them right at like midterms or finals and you're not giving them a lot of time, that doesn't really set them up for success, which means you're not setting yourself up for success. So you want to just kind of keep those timeframes in mind. Now, I think one of the biggest concerns I have with I get from students who are really worried about the letters of recommendation part of the admission process is how to go about asking. And I'm going to go ahead and expand that. I see that there are comments kind of flooding the chat right now. This is a common scenario where maybe you've not been in school for a long time, right? Maybe it's been a while and you need an academic reference. Maybe it's the case that you're transitioning from an unrelated undergrad major. So, you know, how do you go about asking, or how do you go about addressing some of those more challenging scenarios? So the first thing that I want to say is just, as much as possible, you want to try to make this a real-time conversation request. So a lot of places are still operating virtually. I know a lot of places are hybrid right now. Some places are back, you know, in person fully, but that's not the case everywhere. But what I want and what I hope for all of you is that you avoid just sending a quick email with there being no follow-up, right? The idea here is that you want to give that letter of recommendation writer an opportunity to ask you questions and have a conversation with you. It helps for you to share with them, you know, one, why did you select them to write that letter of recommendation? You know, what are your goals with the program? As well as share with them what are the things that you feel make you a good candidate for admission, and what kind of a message you're interested in sending the admissions committee. You might be surprised to hear that a lot of faculty and supervisors, they want to be able to mirror that same message, right? So you want to make sure that if you can, that you make that request in person, or via Zoom or a phone call where you can have a real-time conversation. Now, it's okay to start with an email and try to set up a time. If you're asking a faculty member, trying to attend their office hours is a great strategy, especially if you're a current student taking a class with them. Now, if it's a professor that you took previously, regardless of how long ago it was, and you're hoping that that person will write you a letter of recommendation, it's really your responsibility as the applicant to remind them of how they know you, okay? Share with them, I took this course, you know, give them the title of the course code, let them know what semester and year you took the course. Share with them the grade that you earned. Ideally, if this is someone writing your letter of recommendation, this is that you've earned a strong grade in the course, right? And if you still have copies of your work, I strongly encourage you to share them with them. You know, if you have copies of projects, presentations, assignments, papers where you performed well, that can really help elevate the quality of what is being written. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat here. I promise I will give more time for question and answer on letters of recommendation. I know this is a hot topic here. I just want to share a little bit more information before we get to the question part. So the idea is that you are setting that person up for success, right? You want to provide them with as much information as you can, or as many resources as you can. I encourage students to submit what I would consider an electronic portfolio to them. And that portfolio can just, you know, include a short thank you letter, provide a copy of your unofficial transcripts, your letters of, your personal statement. Even a draft is helpful. Copies of your resume, and copies of any work that you're that you did with them in that course. Similarly, if this is a supervisor in either, regardless if it's in a volunteer setting or a paid setting, you also want to follow a similar process where you are having a real-time conversation with them if possible. Try to coordinate a time. And it doesn't have to be a long time. You know, I think, 20 minutes is often sufficient. You don't need to take up a full hour or anything, but just the idea is that you want to give them a chance for them to ask you questions. You also want to provide them with copies of items that might help them to write a strong letter of recommendation on your behalf. So that could, if we're talking about a volunteer or a work setting, that might include copies of your job description, and you might want to highlight any of the skills or areas of expertise that you demonstrate significant strength in so that they can focus on that. Another thing that you could submit to them might be a copy of your performance evaluations and maybe highlight the strengths pieces again there for them. You may also, whether this is a faculty member or a supervisor writing this letter of recommendation, you might also want to provide something that I'll call it brag sheet. You can also call it a highlights page or a focus page, whatever terminology you feel comfortable with. But the idea behind this document is that the only two people who will see this document are you and the person writing your letter. The admissions committee will never see this. And this is where you can be as direct, professionally speaking, but be direct. What are you hoping that they'll write about you? What do you feel makes you a great candidate for admission? Do you have great active listening skills and you're applying to a social work program and you feel like that's a really critical skill set that you demonstrated in a volunteer position? Are you applying for the accounting program and your quantitative skills are really strong and you want to demonstrate, you demonstrated that in a project or an assignment in a class, right? So get specific, help your letter of recommendation writers to connect the dots. So these are things that you can do to empower yourself and shape the message that's sent about you through your letters of recommendation. And then all of a sudden, the admissions committee is going to start to see a more consistent message between your personal statement, your resume, your letters of recommendation, and any other items that are submitted. So I'm going to just mention that we're still over 170 people in this session today. I see there are a lot of questions pouring in on letters of recommendation. If you have a question, if you can go ahead and take yourself off, maybe if you could raise your hand, let's do the hand raise, and then I'll go ahead and call on folks and we'll go ahead and answer any questions on that.
I have a question about how many letters of recommendation we need.
That's a great question. Yep. So most programs will typically require 2 or 3. So if they'll typically state on their on the program's website how many they require. So just go ahead and connect with them to see what that exact number is. I have not seen, I can't think of any programs that are less than 2, and I'm offhand, I can't think of any that are more than 3. It's usually 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. I see Lucy, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for letting me ask the question. So I have letters that have been written from previous employers regarding my experience and my personality as far as how it would be a good fit for future academic programs, but they were written pre-COVID. And so I had them write original letters and have them do live signatures, so I didn't have to bother them anymore because I moved away. And I don't want to go back and ask them like, oh, can you please update it? Because it's, now it's over 1.5 years old. So would that be acceptable, or do I need to go back with them and just have them update the date?
Well, so the way that letters of recommendation are submitted to San Francisco State University, they have to be actively engaged in this process anyway. So you're going to have to connect with them again. They will have to, what will happen is when you start your application in Cal State Apply, you'll include their first and last name and their email address, and you can include a brief message, and then you hit submit. And what that does is they will receive an email, and in that email, they'll be asked to create a profile, and they'll upload a copy of their personal or their letter of recommendation to an online portal. And
Okay.
you, on the other side, you'll see that something's been submitted, but you won't see what's been written. So what I would encourage, because you'll need to connect with them on that process anyway, that is going to be a great opportunity for you to maybe ask them to make any updates to make it a little bit more relevant to the world we live in now and how that might impact your skill sets or qualifications for admission to your program. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I think it's Nasser. My apologies if I've mispronounced your name. Go ahead.
No, you're correct. It's Nasser.
Okay. Hi,
Just-
Nasser.
I have it might sound an odd question, but is it possible to submit an application without any recommendation letters?
You can, but if it's required by the program, I can, with pretty good confidence, let you know that it's going to hurt your application. It could be the reason you're not offered admission.
Okay.
It is, if it's
But
required.
But the application will still be looked at.
Not necessarily. Well, so what will happen is the Division of Graduate Studies will review your application for minimum admission requirements regardless. The academic program, if not all of your items are submitted and they have more applications than students can be admitted, that might be a reason for them to not review your application because it's incomplete. So that is not something I would suggest. Letters of recommendation can make or break your application. Make no mistake about that.
Right. Just one more question is that
Sure.
is there a way to ask for a waiver for that? To waive
You would have
that?
to contact the academic department. I have to be honest, I've never seen that approved.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, John, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if you have 2 out of the 3 recommendation letters which are agreed to, and the person says, "You let me know, and I'll get it done." As far as if it's closer to that deadline, can you submit those 2 out of the 3, for example, and stay in touch with the third person who might be maybe lagging behind a little bit?
So what I would actually recommend everybody do is give all of your letter of recommendation writers a deadline that's a little bit early before your application is actually due. So hypothetically, let's say your application is due January 15th. You may want to give them a deadline of January 7th. You might maybe even before the holidays if you're really prepared to do that in advance. But that way, if something happens where they are kind of lagging behind, you give yourself a little bit of a cushion to ensure that everything is submitted on time. Now, the system will technically permit you to still have, it will still permit your letter of recommendation writers to submit a letter of recommendation after the deadline. However, I strongly urge you not to take that approach, because if the department reviews your application before that letter of recommendation is submitted, that might be the reason you might not be offered admission. So just, do what you can to work with your letter of recommendation writers to ensure that it's submitted by the deadline.
Okay. Thank you. And then one quick question: the Cal State system doesn't necessarily calculate every school on the Cal State system. Every particular school has to have a separate recommendation letter, correct?
Oh, I see. So you're applying to multiple institutions within the CSU system, and you're wondering if those same letters of recommendation are submitted. I don't think that it's the same ones. I'm not 100% sure on that though. If you want to send me an email at gradadv, I can look into that and follow up with you. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in the chat there.
Okay, thank you. That may be the case. I'm not sure yet, but I appreciate that.
Sure. Okay. All right.
I have another question.
I'm gonna go with the next student. Maria, your hand is raised.
Yeah, just so the people that write the recommendation letters, is there like a certain amount that like a length it has to be like for our personal statement, or can they just write as much as they want?
I'm a little confused by the question, Maria. Are you talking about how long a letter of recommendation writer should be, or how long a personal statement should be?
How long the letter of recommendation should be?
Okay, yeah, letter of recommendation, typically they're about a page. They should ideally be on professional letterhead if possible. 3 to 4 concrete paragraphs really describing your qualifications, how they know you, what their relationship is to you, how they view your ability to be successful in the program or in that field after graduation. Those are the types of things that those paragraphs should focus on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have, I'm really sorry if I mispronounce your name. It's USA.
Yeah, you can call me Sai.
Okay, hi, Sai, sorry. Sai, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Sarah. So my question is around the evaluation of the letter of recommendation that is being done by the SFSU. So how is a letter of recommendation evaluated by the SFSU and what are the criteria to be satisfied even before a letter of recommendation is considered by the SFSU? Like should it has to be on a letterhead or should the email address should be from an institution or the college, something like that?
So best practices there is that your letter of recommendation writer should put it on professional letterhead, and it should be, if possible, sent from a professional email address. So if it's a faculty member, ideally it should be affiliated with their university or college email address. If it's a supervisor, it should be their corporate email. This happens every year where students are seeking letters of recommendation from people who have switched jobs or retired. In that case, you can have it submitted from a personal email. Professional ones or professional or corporate related ones tend to be preferred. If they are submitting it from a personal one, it might be helpful for them to indicate in the letter that they've since retired or whatever those unique circumstances are. But those tend to be best practices. There are many questions. I'm so sorry. We are going to move on to the next topic. I will stay as late as needed to address any remaining questions on this, but we do have a couple more topics I want to make sure we get to, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I will stay as late as needed to get through any additional questions on letters of recommendation. So please hang in there and we will go ahead and shift gears here. All right, so we are going to transition to entrance exams. I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat here on entrance exams, and I want to make sure we had time to review that. So for those who are not familiar, the most common entrance exams for grad school, specifically at SF State, are the GRE or the GMAT. The GRE tends to be used a little bit more broadly for admission to a variety of different disciplines, whereas the GMAT is specifically used typically by business programs. But these are very similar to, you may have taken like an SAT exam or an ACT exam for admission as an undergraduate student. The GRE and GMAT are similar standardized entrance tests for admission at the graduate level. Now, not all programs require them. I would say roughly half, maybe slightly less, I'm just guesstimating here, maybe about 45-ish% of our programs at SF State require an entrance exam like this. You can find out if your program specifically requires it by visiting their admissions webpage on their Find Your Graduate Program webpage. So I'll go ahead and pop that link back in the chat here. So if you're concerned, definitely check to see if it's required there. As far as timeline, you want to give yourself 1 to 2 months to prepare to take this exam. That includes registering. We encourage students to try to take a pre-test just to see where your skills are at the time of application. That way it'll help you to kind of gauge how you're going to study. So if the program that you're applying to requires or is going to be using all parts of the test as part of their holistic admissions process, and you find that, say, maybe your verbal reasoning is really strong, but maybe your quantitative reasoning needs a little bit of work. Well, now you know how you can structure your studying if you've taken a pre-test. You can get sample tests on the GRE or GMAT website, so you can get them in test prep books as well. And we'll cover preparation resources in a moment. Also, as it relates to the timeline, it does take GRE and GMAT some time to score your results and send them to your schools that you've indicated, typically 2, maybe sometimes 3 weeks after you've taken the test. So do budget that when thinking about when to take your exam and when you're building your timeline for your application for admission. There are a couple of different preparation resources that you can take a look at. So a lot of students will choose to do more self-study resources. These may include preparation books, flashcards, these types of study materials that are available on the GRE or GMAT websites. You can also find them on Amazon. Commonly they're, they tend to be relatively inexpensive. They're, comparatively speaking, a lot of folks can get a prep book for $20 or $30. If you are a current student at San Francisco State University, you may want to connect with Project Connect. They have a book loan program, and I do know that they have some test prep books that you may be able to check out. Likewise, your local libraries, y'all, they, a lot of times they do have these materials available to rent. And honestly, the tests don't tend to change a ton from year to year. So if you get a test prep book that's a year or two old, that's usually not a big deal. But that can be one way to kind of help prepare you to study for taking one of these exams. Now, San Francisco State University's College of Extended Learning does offer structured courses that students can register for to prepare for these exams. Do know that those courses, so the first thing is that those courses, they tend to run, gosh, it's like around 4 to 5 Saturdays in a row for several hours, and they it's more of a structured course. Now, the thing to know about that though is that those courses are roughly, I think the last time I checked, so roughly, if they're a few $100s to register for those classes, and that's not covered by financial aid. So you have to really evaluate what's going to work best for you when you're thinking about how you're going to prepare for these exams. Take a look at your budget, take a look at how you learn best. I've spoken with students in the past, and this was what I did when I applied to graduate school. I formed a study group, and I found friends of mine who were applying to even different disciplines, and that was completely fine. And we would just keep each other accountable for continuing to make progress on studying for our GRE exam. Even if it just meant that we had devoted time where we could check in, ask each other questions. And then, afterward, we were able to kind of talk and just spend some time together. And that kind of made it a little bit easier to get through that process. And then I had support with others that were kind of going through the same scenario. So that might be one thing if you happen to know other people who are applying to graduate school and need to prepare for those exams, that's something you can consider doing as well. Let's talk a little bit about the length of the score validity for these exams. So the GRE is that your test scores for the GRE, they're good for, GRE consider those scores good for up to 5 years. Some programs want your scores to be more recent. I have seen some programs say that they want your scores within the last 3 years. The GMAT exam, now the GMAT considers if your score was taken in the last 10 years to be valid. However, our business programs at SF State want your scores to be within the last 5 years. So just be really careful to review the program requirements for the program that you're applying to if you've already taken one of these exams. And then cost information, the GRE, and I checked the cost on these today. Now, these are costs if you're taking the general exams here in the US. If you're abroad and you're taking them, they might vary, but the GRE is $205, the GMAT is $275. Every time I give this presentation, I always get questions from students if they offer fee waivers. Both GRE and GMAT do offer fee waivers on a financial need base. If that is you, just go ahead and put in fee waiver in the GRE or GMAT search engine, and the results will pop up. You'll have to follow whatever steps that they've prescribed there to request such a waiver. Okay, folks, hang tight. We're nearing the Q&A section, and I'll be with you shortly. As promised, there is an option for you all to obtain a QR code or to complete a survey at the QR code listed there. And I'll go ahead and put that URL in the chat because I know it's not always convenient for everybody to to, switch over to scanning a QR code in the middle of a workshop. And I know typing a URL is not always helpful either. So I did put the URL in the chat. You can go ahead and type that in. If you're interested in receiving the materials, including today's PowerPoint, along with any of the supplemental materials that I've been referencing throughout the session, please fill out this form and I will share those materials out by noon tomorrow. So go ahead and fill that out. And with that, we'll go ahead and transition to our question and answer session. So thank you all. If you are in a position where you don't have questions that you want to ask, you are free to head out. If you want to stay and just listen, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to start with raised hands. So if we can all try to use the raised hands feature, that'll be a little bit easier. And then I will transition to additional questions in the chat. Okay, I see Joanna, you have your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so this is very specific for MBA. So do you know, if I want to apply for EMBA, can I apply now or do I have to wait for following next school year? Because I want to do it for spring 2022. I'm not sure if that's
if you're applying for spring 2022. The application, oh gosh, offhand, I'm unsure of the application deadline.
Oh no, it's okay. I have the application program material in front of me.
I'm sorry, I think I might not be understanding the question then.
No, so for me, I want to do EMBA. Will my application now qualify for the EMBA for spring 2022?
Will you be able to apply for the EMBA for spring 2022?
Yes, if you're accepting application for that.
All of the admissions, I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat for everybody. All of our application deadlines can be found at the link that I just shared. It's grad.sfsu.edu/content/apply. About half of our graduate programs offer spring admission. The other half are fall only admission. So I encourage you, if this is your question, if you have questions on application deadlines, please click that link and that will take you to our webpage where you can learn more if your program will offer spring admission. Okay, Jacqueline, I see that your hand is raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, yeah. So are there any other workshops that we can join to get more training or practice on the personal statement or writing, or is that what the QR code is for?
I will, when I send great question. Actually, I'm offering a workshop next week that goes just a little bit more in detail on letters of recommendation and personal statements. I can go ahead and share the details for that. But generally speaking, all of our, I'm going to go ahead and find the link and share that with the group here. We have a workshops webpage. And I'll go ahead and pop that link in the chat. You can see all of our upcoming workshops there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Adarsh, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, so actually I have a couple of questions. I'm just going to go through them very quick. So I've sent in my GRE scores to San Francisco State University. And I just wanted to check, like I also sent in my scores to other universities and the other universities have received it. But on my Cal State apply for San Francisco State, I don't see that the university, that SF State has not received it yet. So what is the right place to check?
Great question. Unfortunately, we still have over 100 participants. I can't answer individual application questions in this workshop, but you can always email our office at gradstudies@sfsu.edu. I went ahead and put that email in the chat. Our office will be able to confirm with you if your GRE scores have been received.
Okay, and I have one more question, like very quick. Like this is probably for the course equivalency form. So like probably this is also an individual question pertaining to my application. So I just wanted to check, like on the website, it says that if you have done if you have not done a 4-year bachelor's in computer science, then you need to submit a course equivalency form. But what about a 3-year bachelor's in computer applications and a 3-year master's in computer applications? So if I have done that, do I still need to submit a course equivalency form?
For that, I would encourage you to double check with the computer science department, because that is specific to an application requirement that they have, to see if they would still require that course equivalency form.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, I'm so sorry. Is it Parandhya? Go ahead and ask.
Hi, my question is regarding letters of recommendation. I wanted to know if it's all right, like if same kind of people write it, or should it be a combination of someone from a professional space and from college? So I'm just, I was just concerned about that.
Yeah, great question. Is a combination a better option if you have, if you're a student, you have a lot of options to pick from. One, that's a great position to be in. I think it really just depends. It really depends on who's going to be able to write the strongest, most positive letters about you. And it also depends on if the department has a preference, right? So some departments really like to see academic references because those skill sets tend to have a stronger correlation with success in the program, whereas other departments really like to see professional experience, and other departments don't tend to have a strong preference. So that really becomes a very unique, individualized answer based on your unique circumstances. Who's at your disposal to be able to write a letter for you, as well as what is that department specifically hoping to see. If you want to get into more specifics on a one-on-one level, I would encourage you to send me an email at gradadv@sfsu.edu, and I'd be happy to have that conversation. Okay, John, your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yes. All right. So the question is about the GRE. I understand it's a little bit of a tricky subject right now. Some schools have it set up where it's allowed to actually submit the scores. Some schools have put on their website that there is no point, please do not submit them. It seems that SFSU isn't being very clear, and it's okay if you don't know the exact answer to this, but it just doesn't, for something that you'd have to invest a lot of time in, if it's something that's not really going to be reviewed and it doesn't make a big difference, it doesn't seem to be very clear on the website if it is something.
Yeah, so I can't, let me clarify here. If the GRE is, it depends on the program you're applying to. The Division of Graduate Studies does not require the GRE. It's your academic department. So it might be the computer science department that you're applying to, the psychology program, whatever program of study, they are the ones who determine if you will need to submit a GRE exam or not. So you want to check your program's admission requirements webpage to see if it's required. The other thing to consider is if your program does require the GRE, different programs will use that information differently. So some programs have used your overall scores in all sections of the exam as part of a holistic review to see if you meet admission requirements. So it's just one element of your application, but they might use that score. Now, some departments may only be interested in one portion of your GRE exam. Oftentimes that might be the analytical writing score, and your analytical writing score may be used to evaluate, are you ready to write successfully at a graduate level? So if that is your program, they typically will say that on their department website, and then you know how you can devote your time studying for the exam, because you know that they're specifically interested in the analytical writing score portion. Does that help?
It does help. Thank you. It does say on the website for my program that it's just waived, but that is literally the only sentence.
Yeah, a lot of I should probably talk on this piece. So some programs during the pandemic did waive the GRE or the GMAT exam for admission. Some programs have not announced if they will continue to waive that requirement if they have required it in the past. So the best thing that you can do is to just contact your department directly if the website seems unclear. There have been some websites I've run across where they haven't clarified if it's going to be required for admission for the fall 2022 cycle. So I would just encourage you to connect with your department there.
Okay, and that's via email or phone call, right?
I would say maybe email at this point. Just we're still kind of working in this hybrid modality, and my personal experience has been that email has been the most successful. Some departments are great with phone though, so you certainly feel free to try both.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Sarah, your hand is raised. What is your question?
Hey, so I was just wondering if you know if it's kind of standardized across the CSUSF applications that the people who write the letters of recommendation submit them personally to your application. Does that make sense? Like in programs I've applied for in the past, I wasn't supposed to read the letter of recommendation. The professor that I had, write had to submit it themselves. So I'm just wondering if you know if that's something with CSUSF.
I can't speak with CSUSM.
No, with San Francisco State.
Oh, okay. At SF State, at the graduate level, your letter of recommendation writers will upload their letter of recommendation to a portal.
Okay,
and you won't see what they wrote, but you'll see that something's been submitted.
Awesome.
Did that answer your question?
Curious.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Grace, you have your hand raised.
Hi. I wanted to ask you because I was looking at the grad program. So is it, if we apply right now, is it for the fall of 2022 or is it just for the spring?
Great question. So fall 2021 applications are not yet available, but they will be soon. They open on October 1st. So if you visit the application website again on October 1st, you'll be able to start your fall application if that's the term you're hoping to apply for. Right now, we're only able to review applications for spring 2022 in the system.
So can you repeat that? So it's like if we apply right now, it's for
spring. Yeah, because fall applications don't open until October 1st.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. All right, Kayla, you have a question.
Hi, yeah. I think I had two, but I know my first one. Let's see if my second comes back to me. My first one was how should a personal statement be formatted, or like, I know it's supposed to be, a lot of this is on your guys' website. I know it's supposed to be like at least 2 page, no more than 2 to 3 pages, double spaced. I know all that. I more meant like, how do we title, like, are we supposed to title it to someone or?
Oh,
Sorry.
I see. I get what you're getting at. I do get that question often. There's not really a necessarily, unless your department specifies that they want you to write your name, personal statement, like how do you, like, is there a header that you have to use? They don't tend to specify. A lot of times it's perfectly fine to just write your essay. You don't necessarily need a header. It's going to be attached to your unique application, so it's not going to be confused with another student's. If you would like, you can include your name and the program that you're applying to and the date at the top, but I don't think that you need to really, that's not the thing I want you to be too concerned with when writing your personal statement.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sure, you got it. All right, Yasmin, you have a question.
Hi, I was wondering how we could apply for scholarships and grants.
Excellent question. Great. I'm actually going to shift gears a moment and share my screen because I did notice this question come up a lot earlier in the workshop. And I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat before I share my screen. This is our Funding Your Education webpage. And I'll just give you each a brief tour of this webpage. All right, so here we go. All right, so if you click that URL, this is where it will take you. If you scroll down, all of these sections expand. So you can read our tuition and fee rate information, financial aid. At the graduate level, you can apply for a FAFSA or a DREAM application. There's some helpful information here. Applications are due March 2nd each year, so just be aware of that deadline. Graduate teaching and graduate graduate assistant and graduate teaching associate, excuse me, are opportunities where you might be able to work within your academic department, where you might be doing some sort of teaching support that would be a paid position that might help offset the cost of your degree. These positions are offered by your department, not through the Division of Graduate Studies. If you're wondering if this is something that your program offers, just connect with your department to find out more information. But I want to show you the scholarship section. So San Francisco State University scholarship database is Academic Works. If you have been with us as an undergraduate student, you may already be familiar with this platform. But basically, you can create a profile and it will match you to scholarships that match your profile information. Both graduate and undergraduate scholarships are housed in this database. If you are an international student, the Office of International Programs has a list of scholarships specific to international students, and we do include that list down here as well, along with several other resources that I would encourage you all to check out, some scholarship essay guidelines that are really helpful to take a look at. Just gonna collapse that. All right, and then our fellowships page, we have a couple of fellowship options that are listed here. We also have our fellowships office if you'd like more information on any of these, or if you'd like to get a little bit more specific guidance on that. Fellowships are, you can consider them like much more extensive versions of a scholarship, I should say. They tend to have higher awards attached to them, but the requirements to be eligible for some fellowships tend to be a bit more involved. There's a lot more involved with some of those. So we do have a fellowships advisor. Her name is Dr. Joy Viveros. She is wonderful. If you have any questions about any of them, you can take a look. But this fellowships office webpage, if you want to learn more about fellowships, it is written with an intent to help educate students more about fellowships. So I do encourage you all to take a look at that. So this webpage can be really helpful. My approach to this is consider financing your education similar to work you might put into a 3-unit course, right? So there might be essays that are involved in deadlines. Some scholarships require a letter of recommendation. So these are things that you want to consider when you're thinking about trying to prepare for the cost of your degree. Did that answer your question?
Good. Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, James, you've been waiting. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, yes, thank you. This is maybe a bit broad, but I was wondering, for applicants who have or who have a disability, what are some resources we should be aware of, or like anything we should know about? Sure.
So San Francisco State University does have it's DPRC. It stands for Disability Programs and Resource Center. Similar to many other colleges and universities, to receive services, there's an intake and an evaluation process. If you have a unique question about something specific about the application process, I would maybe encourage you to send us an email, and we can, throughout the application process, we can maybe guide you depending on the nature of your situation. But we do have the Disability Programs and Resource Center here at SS State. I'm going to go ahead and pull up their webpage and pop that in the chat for you if you want to learn more.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, Harris, go ahead and ask your question. Harris, are you still with us? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Maria, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, okay, I have actually a couple questions, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So the first one is about the required GPA. My cumulative GPA is 2.97. I feel like that's pretty close. But then my GPA from my 2 years at SF State, that's above a 3.0. So which one will they be looking at?
Well, for minimum admission requirements, the way that the Division of Graduate Studies will review GPA is we first look at the cumulative. If that is above 3.0, our admissions evaluators state you've met the GPA requirement. If your cumulative is below 3.0, and only if your GPA is below the 3.0, then will our admissions evaluators calculate your most recent 60 semester or 90 quarter units of study. If that is above a 3.0, then they say, yes, you've met the minimum GPA requirement for admission, and provided that you meet the other minimum admission requirements which are, just to review, that you've graduated from an accredited institution on or before you'd be ready to start your master's, and that you've left your institutions in good standing, then your application would be sent to the academic department for their review. And again, that's where they'll take a deeper dive into things like your letters of recommendation, personal statements, entrance exams, resume, all of that good stuff. If you want to go on a more individual level about your GPA, please send me an email at gradadv@sfsu.edu, and I'd be happy to continue that conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You got it.
My next one would be, I don't know if you can tell me this because it's kind of specific to my program, but I'm trying to get into the Department of Counseling. And it's noted on there that like undergraduate courses, including A, B, and C, are strongly recommended. And I haven't taken any of those. So like, do you think it'll be difficult to get into the program without those courses?
That really depends on your other application or your other qualifications, which includes your other coursework, if you have other related coursework, or if you have related experience. That gets to be a very individual question. For any very specific individual questions, I do encourage you to connect with me one-on-one.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. I guess you kind of answered it, but I'm not sure. For the counseling department, like what constitutes as counseling experience? I ask because I have like a bunch of experience working with children as a teacher and like supporting children and families through difficult emotions and all those things, but not like specific counseling one-on-one type of work, if that makes sense.
It's pretty, I mean, a lot of students are going to be applying to graduate school because they don't have experience, right? Like a lot of times that's the reason, is because you're trying to break into a field or you need an advanced degree to get to that next level. So, you know, volunteer experience, working with specific populations, educational experience, anything in human services is always going to be really helpful if you're applying to programs like clinical psychology, counseling, social work, right? Those are things that they really look for. Don't discredit volunteer experience. These programs highly value that. They like to see students that are committed to their communities, that you know, that they have good strong reasons for wanting to make a difference, right? So these are things that are reviewed. Does that answer your question?
That does, yeah. And then for all the personal stuff, I'll go ahead and email you separately. Thank you so much.
Great. I look forward to connecting with you. Okay. You all are being so patient. There are so many questions today. This is one of the largest workshops I've hosted in quite some time. Thank you all for your patience. Lauren, let's go ahead and take your question.
Hi, I'm wondering, so I looked at the upcoming workshops page and a lot of them say like more coming, like there's none now, more coming. I'm wondering like what kind of timeline, like how should I look at it all day? Like how am I going to know when there's going to be another?
So great question. Due to the pandemic, some of the workshops, we are still evaluating if we'll be offering them. Career Services and Leadership Development also offers workshops on resumes. So we're partnering with them. What I can say, if there's a workshop that you're interested in and you're not seeing an upcoming date, please email me, because I do have past recordings that I can share with you. So I went ahead and popped that in the chat for you.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You got it. All right. Lahari, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, hi. My question is regarding the application specific regarding calculating the GPA. I have a master's degree already from university in India, and I'm graduated in 2020. But I'm interested in pursuing another master's program at SFSU. So can you please provide me information about calculating GPA for spring 2022? Like, should I consider my last qualification or my undergrad academic performance?
I'm very sorry, I lost what your question was. I understood that you have a master's degree outside the United States and that you're interested in applying at San Francisco State, but I'm not clear what the question is.
Can you please provide me information about calculating the GPA for
Calculating your
2020?
GPA.
Yeah. So should I consider my last qualification or my undergrad academic performance?
I think what would be helpful is if you sent us an email, because then we can share the specific grading scale for your wherever you did earn your undergraduate degree and how that would be reviewed. So if you could go ahead and send an email to our office, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat, bradadv@sfsu.edu, and we can follow up with you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, Ruchika, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I have a question about the transcripts. I am an international student, so I would like to know about what transcripts qualify for unofficial transcripts. Like while applying the website asks for the unofficial transcripts.
Okay. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. So for any students who are applying as an international candidate, bear with me one moment. I'm going to navigate to the web page. So this is our admission criteria by country web page. I'm going to try to copy paste this and put this in the chat. I have to move some of my Zoom details out of the way to get at the URL here so I can copy paste that. All right, so that'll be in the chat. This is for international students specifically. So that means regardless of your citizenship, if you earned your bachelor's degree outside the United States, you want to check this web page. What you do is you find your country down here. India is a common one. So I'm going to go ahead and click India. And you will see, it says here what the eligible degrees are. So students must hold one of these eligible degree options to be eligible at the graduate level for admission. These are the documents that we would require that are considered official. And you can see the grading scale that's equivalent, so your marks from India and how those equate here in the US. So students can submit those specific documents, or you have the option to submit an international credential evaluation. We require a course-by-course credential evaluation, and we accept them for one from these 4 services. So you can check this web page for more information. Okay, let's take the next question. Okay, Alexander. Oh, sorry.
I'm not
go
done
ahead.
yet.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question is like, do I need the WES evaluated while applying or once I'm admitted?
You do not, we don't require a WES evaluation. It's an option. So you can submit your country specific academic documents or the WES evaluation. We just provide the option for the evaluation in the event, because for some students that's easier.
Okay.
But we do in-house evaluations of your academic documents. Our admissions
Okay,
evaluators do offer that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Alexandra, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I was wondering, how long do you recommend a personal statement should be?
I recommend your personal statement be as long as the department tells you it should be. So I have seen personal statement prompts that are 500 to 750 words, and I've seen some as long as 6 pages. An average, if your department does not specify a prompt, which is rare, I can only think of one program that doesn't have a prompt offhand. Most programs do have a prompt, and they do give you a word or page limit. An average, usually 2 to 3 pages is average, but I strongly encourage you to read the prompt for the program that you're applying to make sure that you're meeting whatever requirements that they've set.
Okay, and then I was also wondering, where do we find the portal where the letter of recommendation should be submitted?
Excellent question. So we have an application tips webpage, which has a video. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that web page. The video, it's like 5 minutes, and it does a really nice job of showing you how that letter of recommendation feature works within Cal State Apply. That's the #1 question I get about Cal State Apply, is how do I submit my letter of recommendation? So I encourage you to check out that link that I just shared. That is our Cal State Apply tips webpage. There's a 5-minute video, and there'll be a snippet kind of, I don't know, about 2/3 of the way through the video where you can see how that letter of recommendation is submitted.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. All right. Tanya, go ahead and ask your question. Tanya, are you still with us? Okay, maybe Tanya will come back. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Lee, go ahead and ask your question. Okay, I think we've lost Lee as well. Paula, you're up next. What's your question?
Hi. So if I'm applying for fall for the next year, when do I receive the answer if I'm accepted or not?
That's a great question. That'll depend on your department. It's not uncommon for it to take a couple months after you've submitted your application for your academic department to review all applications and then inform students of their admissions decisions. As a reminder, fall 2022 applications open on October 1st. We haven't yet started reviewing fall applications. What program of study are you applying to, Paula?
Counseling in marriage and family. Yeah.
Counseling. So the counseling deadlines are due January 15th for fall 2022 admission, and it will take them a few months to review the applications. You can probably expect something, I would guess, around April. But if you want a more concrete time frame, you can always reach out to the department for confirmation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I think Lee and Tanya have come back to us. Lee, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I'm an international student and I'm going to apply for a clinical program. But the thing is, I saw the international admission needs the English results, I guess. But the graduate program is the GRE is no longer required. So
Lee, I'm really sorry. The audio could be a little bit better. I heard that you're an international student and you're asking about the English requirement.
Yeah.
I'm confused by the question.
Actually, I earned my bachelor's degree from state also, and I'm thinking, is there any material can be waived for the international admission?
Okay, I'm going to repeat back what I think I understand. Please let me know if I have it correct. So as an undergraduate student, you were an international student, but you're earning your bachelor's degree at San Francisco State, and you're wondering if you still need to take an English language test for graduate admission?
Yes.
Okay, because like I alluded to earlier, the language requirement, it's not based on citizenship, it's based on where your bachelor's degree was earned. So if you earned your bachelor's degree from SF State, you will not need to take an English language test for admission. So that's great news.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Tanya, what's your question?
So my question is, so I checked the program that I'm applying for, and I didn't see anything about taking the test, the GRE or the other one. So I'm just curious, like, because they didn't list it on there, that means I don't have to take it, or it's not a requirement?
Generally speaking, if it's not listed, they don't typically require an entrance exam such as the GRE or the GMAT. If you want to confirm, I would encourage you to contact the graduate coordinator for the program that you're applying to. I just shared the link for the graduate coordinators in the chat with the group. But you can go there, find your program of study, see who's listed as the graduate coordinator for your program, and send them a quick email.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem. I have a hand raised from my iPhone 650, etc. Go ahead and ask your question. Okay, I think we lost them. All right, so with that, are there any remaining questions from the group?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, I earned my bachelor on early childhood education, and I'm planning to go for my master. What is the minimum of classes that I have to take for the master program?
How many classes will your program require?
Yeah.
That's a great question. That's gonna, again, vary by program. I want to, share with the group where you can find degree requirement information for your specific program. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you, so this is the academic bulletin, and this is where you can find that type of information here about your degree requirements. So which program again were you applying to?
Early childhood education.
Okay, let me see if we can do a quick search here. So that's for the bachelor's. Let's try to find early childhood. So here's the master's concentration. So if you click on that, then you'll get an overview. You want to click this degree requirements, and you can see it's 30 units. It did actually share that in the overview, but you can see specifically what courses you'd be taking. And if you click on the course code, you can get a description of the course, which is always nice to see. So that's how you can find that information. But again, it's through, I just want to make sure this pertinent for everybody so that you all know how to find this information, but it's through the academic programs link in the academic bulletin. So that link is available to you all in the chat. Okay, sure. Next question.
Yes, one last question. The most programs seem to be open, the applications open on October 1st. And sometimes you can actually open an application and just start without actually submitting it. It doesn't seem to be an option on Cal.
Not until October 1st. Yeah. So fall applications, and it's like locked. Like the system is locked. Fall applications don't open any earlier than October 1st. What I do encourage you to do though is if you know the program that you're applying to, you can review their admission requirements webpage and start working on your application documents now. There's no reason to wait to start drafting your personal statement or to start the conversations with the folks writing your letters of recommendation. Any of those other items that might be required for admission by your department. And then that way, when the application does open on October 1st, you'll be able to upload those materials to Cal State Apply. And that you won't lose any time in the process.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to give it, just one more minute. If we don't have any additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting. If you don't have any additional questions, you're welcome to go. If you have stuff that you want to review on a more one-on-one level, I do want to advise that you connect with me one-on-one, and I'm going to go ahead and put that email in the chat one more time. It's gradadv@sfsu.edu. And just one more call for the workshop materials request form. If you would like a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation, as well as the supplemental handouts, I will be sending an email to anybody who signs up. I went ahead and put the form request back in the chat. I know that put it in there a few times, but the chat's been very active today. We had a huge turnout for today's session. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end and wish you all a great evening. You're very welcome. You're welcome. Have a great night.